Welcome to another episode of the Brighter Thinking Pod from Cambridge University Press. My name is Emma McCrea and I will be your host for today. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a closer look at engaging parents and carers in education, focusing on both the positive impact this can have as well as the challenges that can come up. Our discussion will also touch on the impact the COVID-19 pandemic has had as we explore how it's affected schools, students, teachers, parents and carers alike. Today, we're welcoming two new guests to our virtual studio who are here to offer their unique perspectives on this topic. We're welcoming Richard Morgan, the Assistant Head of Perse School in Cambridge. Hi there, Richard.
Hi, Emma. Great to be joining you.
Thank you. And Beth Borrett, who is a parent of three children. Her eldest is at university in Paris and the younger two at secondary school in Cambridge. Hello, Beth.
Hi, Emma.
Thanks to you both for joining us today. Don't forget that all the links and information for the episode are in the show notes. And if you want to get your voice heard on the show, you can always get in touch by tweeting us at CUP Education using the hashtag BrighterPod. So just to kick off today's episode, we're going to start by asking you a fun question just to get us chatting. So can you please tell us about the most inspiring piece of advice you've ever been given? Richard, let's start with you if that's okay.
Well, I'd say that it was something I remember from my teacher training. One of our lecturers was a passionate believer in active learning, and he would say humans are not born to sit still and stay in silence with no interaction between each other, but we work off each other, we get the best from each other, so you have to trust children in the classroom to explore their learning together. For me, that's been the best bit of advice I've had as a teacher.
That's brilliant. I really like that. I can certainly get on board with the not being able to sit still and stay silent with my youngest because she is an absolute fidget. And Beth, same question to you.
Mine's more of a family-based one. I think my husband's mantra has always been to me and to the children that if anything, any opportunity sort of comes your way, you should grab it, no matter how scared you feel at the time. And I think certainly for my family, that must have sunk in somewhere because we're very proud of our eldest who has taken the plunge and gone to study his degree in Paris, and he's very happy. He's doing well. So, it's obviously rubbed off somewhere.
That's amazing. I think it's so valuable to kind of equip children with the belief that they can do everything and that sometimes if something's a bit scary, you should still just go for it. Okay, let's move on to the rest of the show. We're going to kick off with quite a challenge, actually. So we've got quite a broad, open question. How would you define parental engagement in education? But just to make it that a little bit more tricky, we'd like to ask you to define that in 1 minute. Beth, would you like to start?
For me, I see it as being 110% committed to the school, to its staff and to its ethos, regardless of, I suppose, how actually physically actively you are involved in that school. And for me, parents are supposed to act as support mechanisms so that teachers can do their utmost to enable the best outcome for every child. And that could be something as simple as making sure that your child gets to school on time, wearing the right clothes, with their planner, with a drink of water, having had a good night's sleep. And for me as well, it's always also, I suppose, about sort of being open to an honest discussion with the school, with the teachers, no matter how difficult that conversation might end up being. And it's about trusting the staff and working in partnership with them to enable, the best for everybody.
Excellent. I think that's a really positive, I think it was less than a minute actually. So a really positive and kind of open way to approach engaging with the school. Richard, over to you.
So I think I would echo Beth's point. And I'd also add that from a school perspective, I think an engaged parent body will really help to create a nurturing environment. And that's one where children can genuinely feel that everyone around them is combining their efforts to give all the support they can so that each child feels valued within that community. For me, I think parental engagement lies right at the heart of making sure that a child's education is a truly collaborative process.
Excellent. Thank you for that. It's really interesting to hear kind of both points of view. So from the school side and the parent side. Now let's dig a little bit deeper into the topic. I'd like to read some thoughts from Mohammed on the Cambridge panel, who teaches maths and is based in Tanzania. He says, parents and carers do play a big part in the welfare of the child at school. When there is a strong commitment between the teachers and parents, children feel motivated towards learning. I think this is a really interesting insight, especially in light of the current COVID-19 pandemic, where students have had to really start to learn in different ways, to find ways to motivate themselves, different sorts of motivation, and obviously managing that being away from their friends and their peers in their usual environment. I'd like to ask you both, what extent do you think the COVID-19 pandemic has changed the ways in which parents and carers are involved in education? Richard, if we can go to you first this time.
Well, I'd say that the perhaps biggest change we've seen is extended periods of learning away from school and at home. And I think it's the most radical change that children and parents have experienced during that time. I really do feel that the situation at home makes a big difference in each individual setting. And for many people, the home's also become the workplace. And if everyone at home is busy with their day jobs, then I think by nature, the supervision of children's learning can end up being handed over ultimately to the child themselves. And that means that the usual level that there might be of adult input can be reduced. And in some cases, that could end up being reduced to virtually nothing, potentially a much lower level all round than they would usually get at school. On the other hand, of course, if someone at home is able to support, monitor, and engage with the learning that's going on, then you can very easily find parents becoming very much more engaged than they normally would. So there can be some real positives there as well. And they can feel really integrated in the child's learning too. But overall, I would say that the pandemic has resulted in perhaps a greater level of understanding of what a school day is like for a child nowadays, and how important the interactions that the children have are going to be for their own development and their well-being. And I think there's a much greater understanding that school is about a lot more than just the academic studies and the grades.
Excellent, thank you. I mean, I've certainly found it an interesting insight into how difficult it can be to teach young children just trying to get my two to do stuff at home. Beth, what's your experience been like throughout this period?
I found it really tough. My children found it really tough, and I think my husband found it really tough because we were, for a long time, the family dynamics totally changed because we were all of us suddenly at home, and not something we've all really done properly for a long time now. This routine that you've been following that makes everyone feel safe and secure. And everyone says, routine's great for children from when they're babies, routine, and it's suddenly taken away from you. And it's really unsettling, not just for the children, but I think certainly for me as well. I think who said about it was recognising the difficulty of the school day for children. I really appreciate what they have to do, but also what the teachers have to do. It's tough. It's a really tough job. The Perse online teaching was excellent. And Richard said earlier on, if you are lucky enough to be at home and help your children, which I am, but I switched off because it was just so intense. It was just constant. There was no movement. They were just up, in their rooms, pored over their computers, staring at their screens, and it was just constant. And I just sort of switched off, I suppose. So I found it tougher than when they're at school. Yeah,
I'd certainly agree with that. I mean, mine are younger than yours. My eldest has just turned 10 and my daughter's 6. My son he's very good at getting himself going. Most of his lessons were online. He would sit himself down and just get on with it. My daughter, she's far less academic than her brother, and she really struggles with reading and writing. And I found that so hard, like even just taking a breath and being like, okay, let's go over this again. Like the amount of respect that I had for teachers going through that sort of process of just trying to get her letters right and things, I can't even imagine how difficult that must be when you've got 30 other children. Okay, let's now have a little look at that sort of less positive side. So what potential challenges do you think can come up if a parent or carer is not well engaged with the school or the child's learning? Beth, if we can go to you first for that one.
So, well, obviously the impact on the child will be huge. The school can do things, and our school does do stuff. There's constant communication between the head every Friday, with the heads of year, with the form tutors, with the subject tutors. But ultimately, if parents don't want to be involved and don't feel it's their role, and to a certain extent I understand that, I don't feel it's my role to push into the school. It's very difficult, and maybe that means that the child doesn't feel as much a part of the school either.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that you kind of say potentially parents don't feel like it's their role. Certainly I wouldn't feel comfortable trying to teach my children because I'm not a teacher. And I swear they changed the way things are taught from when I was at school as well. But I do think as a parent, you have that responsibility to encourage your child to be curious and interested in things and to support their interests at home, whether that's not necessarily maybe formal kind of teaching stuff, but just let's have a look at this thing that you're interested in. Let's find a way to get some more information about this topic, go and explore this, those sorts of things. Richard, have you got anything you kind of want to add to that?
I think I would just add that parental engagement is something that schools, from a school perspective, I don't think you should try to force it or enforce it, as it were. And I think it's something where there are always positives and bonuses to be had from the voice of the parent body coming through strongly and actually being able to talk on an individual level as well. But I think we always have to remember that we don't know every single bit of information about what's going on in every household, in every home, and that can have a huge impact on each individual child's learning and their progress. And whilst we will always look to put the pieces of the jigsaw together, or should look to help and be the linchpin there, I think we also have to recognise that there can be times where if parents are seen as over-engaging, perhaps by their own children, it can lead to conflict in the home. And I think at a time like what we've been through, where tensions are running high already, and it might just be one thing too many. It might just be, I suppose, the straw that breaks the camel's back in terms of making it open up rifts with the children. So I think we want actively to encourage parents to be involved, and I think a lot of that comes through communication, mass communication in terms of the whole parent body, but also that individual communication. But I think we always have to be mindful of everyone's individual situation.
I think as well that takes us back to the previous question about dialogue, and no matter how difficult it is, for whatever reason, because parents don't feel confident or because the conversations to be had are difficult, having that conversation and that two-way honest talk from the start is crucial. And flagging up to teachers a potential an issue that just before it becomes a problem, be it little Johnny's dog died this morning and he's got to come into school, all those sorts of things for children, especially for younger children, are key, I think. But I think also, as well as children get older, actually we should be, my daughter's in upper sixth. She's 18 now. I really, much as I would love to get fully involved in her life, she'll be gone. And I think you do as parents, the older they get, the less the less they need you, and the less you should really be involved.
Yeah, I think that's something that I'm going to have to be mindful of as mine get older.
It's tough. It's tough. I tell you, it's really hard.
Yeah, it's a difficult balance, I guess, isn't it? I'm going to throw something in that has kind of been in my head as we've been talking. How do you think that link between home and school has changed as a result of COVID? I know from my experience, I actually have no time at all with my children's teachers. I drop them at the gate and they go in, and I never have that, even that 5-minute chat with their teacher to say, oh, this thing happened this morning, or I'm a bit worried about this particular thing. What do you suggest? None of those opportunities are there. I don't know what your experience has been like, Beth. Perhaps if we start with you for this one.
Yeah, I think I agree with you that the social distancing, there's no, I mean, not that I'm in that stage now, but I think certainly for prep schools or for the lower schools where you made your friends and a lot of business was done in that playground, waiting for them to go in. Yes, that's really tough. I have found that, although I have found the Perse email, for me, certainly I've been emailing quite a lot for various things to do with my children, and the email does come back straight away. But yes, you can't now really go in, hang around the playgrounds. It's tough, and everything has to be done in advance. There's no sort of off the sleeve things that just happen, and often they are the best opportunities is when the lack of planning. But no, it's tough. It is really tough, and that's certainly not happening here as far as I can see. Sport even is cancelled, so you can't stand on the sidelines and
yeah, it's all those kind of informal connections, isn't it? Richard, what's that been like from your side?
So I'd say one area that I think we've seen quite a bit of changes in the individual conversations we have with pupils. And I think at a very early stage of going into sort of lockdown phase, we became very aware that students will respond in different ways, and that they need perhaps a bit of an outlet to just explain how things are, both with learning, with the challenges they're facing with the learning, but also how things are at home. And I suppose we would always have those one-to-one discussions about how is everything going. But to be able to do that and find that we're talking about a whole range of different topics that we may not have gone into such depth on. We'd always be asking, how are things with your friends, siblings, but actually really going into a bit more detail about, well, how is everything at home? Are you getting on okay? Are there things that we can help with as a school? It opens up a whole range of different conversations. And in a way, I think it's probably brought some of the teachers that are having those conversations closer to the children they're looking after, particularly those pastoral staff or form tutors, people who are in those roles where it may not necessarily be the classroom subject specialist, but the person who's taking that individual responsibility. And I think it's crucial that every child has got somebody that has got a singular oversight for that child and can look out for their individual needs. And just find out whether there's anything that they perhaps feel they can't offload to somebody at home, that they might still need to talk to an adult and might need to discuss in a forum that means that they feel they're being heard. So I think that's probably been one of the biggest challenges, but actually long-term, one of the most rewarding outcomes from the situation, and that could make the biggest difference to the children.
Yeah, I had a phone call my son had a phone call once a week from his tutor from the very, very start, from his form tutor. And after speaking to him, the teacher, his form tutor, was put on to me, and we had a chat as well. And now his form tutor is a person to me. He's not just someone a name on an email. And I think that, yes, totally agree with you. I think it's brought him closer to his form tutor, whereas previously, maybe he would not have gone to him with a problem. I think now he would. And I feel that I know him much better now as well. I know where his parents live and, all that type of thing.
Yeah.
So
I think that has been one of the kind of the unexpected upsides of this situation, is that it has, you've opened up new channels of communication, and it might not be the same as it was, but it's in a different format. Before we finish up for today's episode, we have one final question from Abhinandan on the Cambridge panel, who teaches English and is based in India. Abhinandan asks, should parents and carers be allowed to have a say in all matters with respect to the teaching and learning process happening at school? I think, again, this is particularly interesting in light of the circumstances of this year and the impact that we've been discussing and the ways that it's separated but also simultaneously brought us closer. Richard, let's go to you for that one first.
So in essence, my short answer would be no, but I want to explain why that is, rather than it just coming across as being a particularly blunt response from a teacher. I think any teacher would be the first to recognise that ultimately a parent has got an unparalleled knowledge of their own children. I don't think we doubt that for 1 minute. They know what motivates them, what upsets them, what inspires them, and also what turns them off. And those are really useful and it's important. But to a certain degree, parents are sending them off to school to learn in a formalised and more standardised manner. And with that, there's an element of trust, a trust that's based on the fact that you are putting your faith into the professional approach and the professional educational ability of those people who are teaching them. Now, what I would say is that the best schools are always going to want to get feedback and input from those parents, just as much as they will do from the students themselves. But schools are always going to find with that as well, that they're perhaps just as likely to end up reassuring the parent body as to why something is done the way it is, rather than always changing policy on the basis of the input that comes through from either the parents or the students, or sometimes the teaching body itself. There are often good reasons why things can't necessarily change. And there definitely shouldn't be any fear of getting parental perspectives into matters that go on in the teaching and learning process. And it can be really, really valuable in terms of evaluating what you're doing and whether it's effective. But if things aren't being done for the right reasons, and upon reflection, a school feels that they're doing the right thing, then I think they can then explain clearly their rationale and carry on doing what they do, but at least having been through that process and had that conversation. I think what's important is that schools listen to parental input. They're brave enough to recognise that when something should be changed on the basis of parental feedback, that action is taken, and that they duly recognise the contribution of the parents and the commitment that parents make to supporting a huge range of things that go on in any school. But at the same time, it can't be as straightforward as just because someone says, I don't like it this way, that we automatically end up with change.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I have that to a certain extent on a very much smaller scale with a team that I coach. It's often the parents will come to you and say there's an issue, and actually you talk to the children and there's nothing. There isn't an issue, or they want something done a certain way, and you have to spend a lot of time explaining why we can't do this thing. But it is always, it's useful to get, I think, that different perspective on things, albeit, as you say, not necessarily changing things just because that input's come in. Beth, what would you say to that question?
I'm in total agreement with both of you. I think as parents, we're too close to our children to be able to see things objectively, and it's very easy to get fired. I've done it. It's very easy to get fired up over something. And you write an email and you're just that close to sending it, and you're like, nah, I won't do it. And you think, I'll save it to the following morning, and then you wake up and think, gosh, thank goodness I didn't send that email. I think we see our children as our children in the home environment. Teachers see our children as students in the school environment, and the two are very different. While I think we do have stuff to add, I think we have to trust and have confidence in our teachers that of course they have our children's best interests at heart. They want our children to succeed. They want our children to be happy, healthy individuals who grow into happy, healthy adults. I don't think there's any badness there. So I think we just have to put our trust in the teachers. And I don't have the academic ability or the knowledge or the training to be able to question what happened. So you have to trust them.
I think that's a really interesting point that you make, that actually the child as they are at home can be quite different to the child in school. And it's, you never get to see that. You never get to see them in the classroom interacting with their peers and interacting with their teacher and see that side of them. So I think that's a really interesting reflection. Unfortunately, we have run out of time for today, so I'd just like to wrap up and say thank you to Richard and Beth for joining us in our virtual studio today. It's been really interesting having this conversation and hearing your insights. Can I just ask if our listeners want to find out any more about you? Is there a website or a Twitter account that they can go and check out?
If you do a search for Richard Morgan Cambridge, you should find me very easily on LinkedIn, which is probably the best place to find me or make contact.
Excellent, thank you. And Beth?
No, because I am not the most technically able person in the world.
Oh, the same. I'm the same.
But it's been absolutely lovely to talk with you, and it's certainly clarified some issues for me as well, just being able to vocalise them. So thank you ever so much.
Thank you. Thank you also to our panelists who sent questions in. We do really love to hear from the audience. So if you do want to get in touch, remember you can tweet us at CUP Education using the hashtag BrighterPod. And also remember, everything will be in the show notes in terms of links and information. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. And if you're listening through iTunes, please do leave us a review. Thank you very much for listening, and don't forget to tune in to our next episode as we pick up part 2 of this conversation. We'll be rejoined by Richard and Beth, along with Susan Holmes, head teacher at the Nehru World School in India, to discuss how schools can provide more engagement opportunities for parents and carers, and considering the factors that may hold parents and carers back, looking at how to overcome these challenges. Thank you, and goodbye for now.